Now, grief experts have talked about the toll it takes on the victim to have to ask for an apology. We're not even talking professionals here. If you have to ask your partner to apologize for hitting you, it takes a big toll. But these are not dysfunctional, typical Americans. These are not drunken lovers. These are not abusive parents without any parental training, courtesy of our government policy. These are people committed to the whole world winning, according to them. These are people that I've just paid $175 an hour to go on one of the most bizarre abuse cycles imaginable, that I've had to explain in an exhausted state why they are committing suicide by not owning this. I have to tell the head of high, Jason Weston, in a place where I can barely get out of bed to type, "Dear Jason, this is a high issue for this reason, this reason, this reason, this reason, this reason. This is an unpalatable truth. This has happened, courtesy of trusting you. It cannot be undone. In the information age, you cannot silence a story. You have one option. You must, before I talk to anyone, you must tell this story in a convincing way to your people, explaining to them what you did wrong, that it is your number one priority to fix it, and why it's not going to happen again, and to thank them again for their trust and for bearing with you, and a commitment to pull out all the stops to make high a safer place where this doesn't happen. That is your one chance to turn an unpalatable secret that you're trying to keep. You've just sent me a contract asking me to sign that I would never tell anyone in my entire life. This is the biggest abuse you can imagine to an abuse survivor. It's saying you can never be known in your pain. We've fucked you over like nobody's business. In order for you to be seen and honored in your pain, for your heart to be heard in the pain we have evoked with our abuse cycle, you must be seen, which means that our shithole of a protocol must be seen with you. But we don't want to be seen because this doesn't look good. So while we're committed to the whole world winning, we're not committed to you winning. Or because, don't take it personally, we're not committed to anyone winning. There is not a single fucking person that we'll take a stand for. Because here you are asking directly for a stand, getting out of bed to coach the head of the Human Awareness Institute that the right protocol for high, not for me. If I want to make a big stink, I just turn them into villains, make a big shitload of money. I've got a 10-hour recording of Peter Sandhill escalating a romantic relationship on my first psychedelic experience, lying, all kinds of crap. And then I've got all your emails. I mean, if I'm going to make a lawsuit, I've got it right there. You're idiots. I don't want to make a lawsuit. I've never sued someone in my life. I don't want a conflict. I want help. And I want you to get your act together for the next participant. So please turn an unpalatable secret into a palatable secret by saying these things to all your people. Silence. Jason Weston avoids it again, so I bring it up again. Silence. And they start their communication control. This is Mr. Trump to a T. Why do people do this? They do it because of trauma. They do it because they're not thinking. Maybe they're trauma strategy is fight. So they're going to fight their abuse survivor. Now, every wound they slap, every slap in the face they give me, they have to pay for in one of two ways, either ending their careers or shitloads of money. Because that's the only thing that we consider acceptable in this culture. We do not consider it acceptable in this cult. Well, we do if it's behind closed doors, obviously. And since I wrote to every team member and every high member in the board about it, it is acceptable in high. But it is not acceptable in the press, in the cult, in the public facade, that a trauma survivor in a suicidal state asks for help by someone presenting themselves as a trained professional who takes $175 an hour to sexually abuse the patient, who then is further abused into a shame-based secrecy protocol by the entire group and then pushed out of business and then harassed for trying to tell the story. We do not consider that honorable. Do you? See, this is not rocket science. This is very, 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 very basic. Now, when they refused to apologize, I knew in that instant that everything I had ever tried to do to heal and solve and manage trauma and all my abusers was not going to work. That I had to go into completely unknown and uncharted terrain in the middle of a full-blown trauma, without support, without coping skills, where 4 of my therapists were lined against me, where my entire community was participating in the abandonment rather than resolving and helping to heal the PTSD. That was a breaking point. Right there. Now, I've tried to work around it in different ways, and I cannot get the emotions to flow again in their locked up position without changing the helplessness that is in this position. This is a position of the most helplessness I've ever been in. The most hate as a result of the helpless. I'm not normally a helpless person. I've published 10 books, I've made millions of dollars, I've run a business for 25 years, I've spent time with 70 lovers, I've been traumatized over and over and over again and dealt with it. I've worked with 30 therapists, I've done $150,000 in therapy, I've traveled globally, I've spent time at Esalen, I've spent time at Findhorn, I've talked with this author and that author, I've had plenty of growth. I'm not normally a helpless person. I've achieved thousands of goals. But here, induced by a series of unexpected betrayals, unexpected lies, I found myself helpless and descending for the first time into intense rage and hatred. The constellation of helplessness. And I thought, see, in my teens and 20s, I broke abuse contracts. I tore them up in meditation. I worked with Lazarus on shame. I worked with Lazarus on panic. I healed my inner child. And one of the big frustrations with that work was I didn't feel there was an ending. After what, 500 hours or more of work with my inner child, I didn't feel that it just ended. It just went on. You know, and I could, you know, it's like, and the same with the 100,000 I spent on energy work. We cleared meridian after meridian after meridian after meridian. Oh, let's clear your father off the body 3 feet at 2-year-old in the governing and central meridian. Yeah, we did that 3 or 4 weeks ago. Fine, clear it again, clear it again. Let's clear it 8 feet off the body, 8 feet off the body. This one about your mother, and this one is a 1.5-year-old. Okay, are we gonna? I mean, how many 6-hour-a-week, you know, weeks are we gonna have of clearing these assholes out of my meridians? How many hundreds of thousands of dollars? Which, by the way, courtesy of our tax policy, I have to pay 40%. If I want to spend $100 to be a nicer person, to clear these endless meridians, we'll go figure. I have to pay another $40 to our government for not protecting me as a child from the childhood abuse that I'm trying to clear off. Because it's not their job to protect children from abusive parents. It's their job to collect taxes from the people trying to clean up their shit. That's how we work in this cult. Seem sociopathic to you? Particularly after you then have to pay $175 an hour and then pay 40% to be abused, and then you can pay more money by, to new therapists to listen. Oh, that's dreadful. Well, it is dreadful. Go talk to them. Someone speak to these assholes. No. That's not what we do here in therapy. We charge you money so that you can say how dreadful this is, and we agree with you. That's how it works. You don't change anything. Well, I've already tried. They don't read the emails. They don't want to respond. They do not want to hear this, so why would they respond to it? Well, this is very difficult in our culture. It is indeed. It is indeed. High school shooters line up. You've got a better plan, don't you? Don't waste 80 years in therapy paying taxes on all these shitholes lining up that could give a damn about you. Shoot them up, and we'll get a little bit of movement. I'm sure there'll be plenty of money to send militant army groups to further abuse those children, because we can't take a stand for parenting literacy. Even a $6 parent shipped free to every parent based on parental best practices, too expensive. Let's just leave all the kids to clean up the mess we don't want to deal with. There's a freeze point, and it locks up. And when it happens because too much energy, too much electricity has been fueled into your phone, and it's about to explode, so it dissociates. The phone disconnects from the battery because there's a surge. Okay, now you can't operate. So I'm in this dance with massive amounts of energy that, heaven help me if I have something to do with being born into this. Lazarus said, I chose all this because of my beliefs and blah, 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 and apparently, so, you can do experiments, and this is what pisses me off. I talked to this Lazarus friend, my first partner, who didn't know anything about relationships after working with Lazarus for 20 years and this and that and the other. It's like, are you meeting people who are changing their parents because they changed this belief? What about the longevity workshops? The channel seems to be getting as gray-haired as anyone else. Oh, they're not doing any of these longevity workshops now that he's old, are they? And what about these? Oh, he changed his mind on that. It's like, if you're so evolved, show up and do something. Don't just sit there charging money to blame everyone else for how they're creating their reality. Lazarus, do you create your own reality? Why are you creating a reality in which you're talking to a student who's fed up with you? Why are you doing that? Much too enlightened to encounter such a decision. You're committed to win-win. Why are you losing with one of your core students? You're so loving, parents. Why don't you talk about this and apologize? No, we can't apologize for that because we never did anything wrong, you see. But if we had, we would be apologizing right and left, if we had. And so at some point, what I've found in relationships is my freeze point, and this is when I get out, is everyone has shit, and that's normal. So I will ask them, what is your shit? Now the first level I can't deal with, but I tolerate, is, I don't have any shit. Okay, that just means I have to do 5 times as much work to find out what your shit is that you don't have. So I start asking questions of blah, 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 blah. Then we find out what your shit is. The next thing is I tell you which parts of your shit I have a boundary around. I cannot be lied to, You break this, you do that. Okay, that's typical as well. You have a learning curve, fine. I have to remind you because you don't remember your shit. Okay, I can deal with that. I will remind you. But the frozen point where I say you're out of here, and this happens a lot, is I have to figure out what your shit is because you're in denial. I have to tell you what my boundaries are and blah, 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 because you don't ask. And I have to remind you because you forget and don't have skill in that area. That's pretty much what you got to expect if you want a relationship with an American. It's just the statistics. You want to find the 1% that doesn't do that and go off on all these hundreds of dates and all that to try and find that, great, go ahead. But that's pretty much the deal. The frozen point is when they get angry at me for pointing out the stuff they've forgotten again, so that I'm basically being punished to do all their work for them. Zip, that's crossed the line, off you go. Thanks for a good ending agreement, let's do it. Be on your way. Out of my system. Feels great until you realize, okay, now we're going to deal with the exact same thing with the next person, or we're going to have 100 to 1,000 conversations to find someone who is excited about not having to do this. It's just so exhausting. So there's an enormous well of pain. Now, it's important to understand that most of this is not any of your fault. It's not any of my fault. It's not High's fault. We have a cult that says that algebra is more important than learning the strings of your own heart. We have a cult that says that the only acceptable way for men to express emotion is violence, and it's preferable if they don't have any emotions. We have a cult that says that you're less valuable if you have baggage, a nice euphemism for having feelings. We have a cult that says that you're only desirable if I can use you for this, that, and the other. We have a cult that says that making endless amounts of money, I work with millionaires, they never have enough. Endless amounts of money. They work harder than you and I do. I stop at 100 grand a year. I stop. I take 6 months off because I don't want the money. I want time to try and figure out what the fuck's going on. I want time to read. I want time to grow. I want time to relate. I want time to show up for my partner. Not my millionaires. No. As soon as they have enough money, they've got to hire me to spend the money to justify why they don't have any time to talk with their partners or families. And boy, are they furious if I take an interest in any of their children. We may be abandoning and violating our children right and left, but we're certainly not going to let a potential stranger who we thought was a decent contractor, what are you doing talking about this, recommending this book to my daughter? Who do you think you are? You want to get paid? It's a joke. It's a very sad joke. And there are lots of taboos. You know a taboo when it is irrational, unscientific, in no one's interest, and nobody's doing anything about it. Well, there are tons of them. So when you've got these deep frozen parts, the best technology is circling and honoring. To circle and honor, first of all, you need to bring in enough people. For example, I asked all of the high facilitators to hold and respond because my sense was that with 7 or so of them really showing up, this energy could dissipate and become a very powerful ally, meaning that within my pain is every dysfunction in the high power structure. If you study my pain nuance by nuance, you will be able to diagnose and understand everything that is wrong with the high power structure, how the high facilitators operate and don't operate, what they know, what they don't know, what their protocols are, what their protocols aren't, what their plan for emergency this is, what their plan for emergency isn't, what their blind spots are. You will see it all in black and white. Now, the greatest value that an organization can have is someone with that nuanced amount of information that can elicit a willing transformation of the power structure. This is gold. Gold. Now, it is also the enemy of the shadow. The shadow that has survived by being in the shadow, that has a purpose to keep survival alive, that deals with reptilian type things, does not want to be seen. So what is the gold of an organization is the terror and the bane of the shadow survival strategies of the facilitators. So we see two forces at work. This is gold for the organization. This is terror for the shadow structures. It's gold for the country when Trump's shenanigans come out, but it's horror for Trump's ego. Well, it's hard to say because he seems to enjoy upsetting people, so it's hard to say. And but what we need is ethical circles for two purposes. When facilitators or leaders or power, whether it's Trump because nobody dealt with his 6-year-old, or whether it's the facilitators because they've grown up in America and learned that nobody cares about them, if they're not on top, leading workshops on love, intimacy, all perfect beings, nobody gives a shit about them. The only reason they're paid, respected, whatever, is they don't make mistakes and all that. If that's their belief because they've experienced the shithole of American cultism, of ignorance and appease the abuser and all that, then they're just much nicer versions of Trump, desperately trying to stay, maneuvering things around to stay in power and hide the shadow, keep it out of view. Well, who was there for the facilitators? Terrified little girl. I tried to be there, they wouldn't have it. Tried to love Peter. He said he's looking for love, blah, blah, blah. He could not digest my kind of love, which is data. My kind of love is pattern recognition. My kind of love is to say, you want to drive gracefully, and here's your shape. You're going to drive very, very well here, 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 and then you're going to have a big bump every time you get to here. What you need to do is do this. That's my kind of love. Data. I care enough about you to look and then measure and then suggest and then test and then keep in dialogue until you are able to drive smoothly again. And when you tell me you are and I can see you are and it makes sense, I feel happy because now you have a healthy vehicle. Now, to someone like myself, this is experienced as love. To plenty of other people, in my experience, this is experienced as an attack. My parents were terrified of me and they attacked me because I couldn't help them unless they could see the deformed shapes, and they couldn't see the deformed shapes without feeling unlovable. So they attacked me every time I tried to bring anomalous shapes to their attention so that they could be integrated symmetrically into the wheel. So I have been attacked my entire life by power structures in this cult as I attempt to bring the data that is necessary for them to experience ease and health and vitality. This is a very sad thing. It's a very, very sad thing. Because I had to learn pattern recognition to survive the abuse of my parents, which makes me very good at it. Ann Watts at one point said that I'm exceptionally good at it. In one of our sessions, I didn't realize that everyone couldn't do this. This seems like common sense to me because I see shapes in my mind. Mathematics doesn't lie. I understand the translation of data points into heartstrings. I understand that when unemployment goes up 2%, domestic violence goes up with it, which means that in a cult as uncivilized as ours, where we cannot do a broadcast apparently to teach people in domestic violence families on the radio how to deal with one another in live coaching sessions all over the country funded by our power structures. No, nobody wants to hear it, and we don't want to talk about it. So we have to deal with stuff indirectly, which means you help unemployment and you help abused spouses. You help women when you help the economy. So these are not abstract numbers. You hear 2% unemployment, and you've got to imagine 100,000 people beating their spouses, feeling depressed, erupting in rage and causing PTSD in your children, and you should be alarmed. In a cult that will not deal with that issue directly, you should be alarmed. And that's how I see it. This is not just an anomalous me dealing with a bizarre pattern of abuse and avoidance by my community, my team, my facilitators, my government, my country. This is what we're all dealing with, and it means a shitload of pain. Less on me than most. I'm in Thailand. But more on me than most because I'm sensitive. The 10 to 20% in Elaine Aron's research on highly sensitive neurology and brain mean that people in my demographic feel your pain sometimes more than you do. It's a rather irritating phenomena. I can say that 10% to 20% of my relationships, I've been more attuned to my partner's feelings than they are, which gets into the very dicey type of thing of me telling them about the feelings on their faces that they're denying, and the smarter ones of them saying, you're absolutely right, you just notice this more than I do. But I don't want to be the one saying this is what you feel. But nor do I want to be the one at effect of blind feelings that are in the space that I see coming a mile away, because I had to learn that's when I was going to be beaten. You see, I had to see the feelings before my parents did, because by the time they see them was after they beat me. You ask my parents how they're doing, oh, everything's great. They're completely dissociative. I had to know them much better than they knew themselves. And then after I knew them, I had to do the dual language, where first of all I had to know them to be safe, and then I had to know who they thought they were so that they could lie about how great they were and feel good about themselves so they would not beat me some more. I had to know two languages, their version of reality, and their words connected with their version of reality, their actions connected with my version of reality. And their actions didn't exist, or they would just make up new stories. It's like, they would love to bribe me to pretend that the biggest elephant in the room had never happened. Like, hello, how are you today? Isn't it wonderful? Can we overlook the fact that I smashed your head in? Could we overlook that fact? This doesn't make me look very spiritual, and I'm going out for one of my seances, And so, this is a recipe, by the way. If you learn the strings of the heart, what you're seeing is a recipe for enormous bitterness. Bitterness, the taste, when all the nourishment is out, the taste of hatred, the taste of loneliness, the taste of betrayal, sustained to protect someone else's ego, so that they can enjoy their life a little bit more at your expense. Bitterness. There's nothing wrong with the heart that feels bitterness. There's something wrong with the family that induces it. When you say wrong, it's hard to know the source. I had it easier than my parents did. Their parents were sicker than my parents were. And we were all very happy Americans, I can assure you, in upper middle class homes. I know how bad it is because I've grown up all my life being told I have it one of the best. I had Waldorf school. My father, according to some, is a genius, until he died, of course. But my mother was the classic beauty. Couldn't have had a better porn star if you wanted one. We had organic food, passive solar homes, Waldorf educations, traveled the world, currency hedge fund manager, try this, do this, tutoring. You have no idea how much pain lay beneath that veneer. And I've been told my entire life how lucky I am. I look around, most people have it worse. 3 out of 5 siblings face suicidal thoughts. That's a lot. That's a nightmare. I'm in so much pain right now. I cannot get large sections of my psyche to flow that are frozen over. Even in Thailand, I can't get it to flow. What does that say for the rest of us? And that's why I'm making this video. We need to care enough about the young boy who's going to deal with all of this and not have a single person to even make him feel guilty for hating his parents to talk to. He's going to be bullied more than I was. He's going to be hated for his sensitivity more than I was. He's going to feel lonely at a level that I haven't known, even when I want to die. And it's going to deal with the sociopathic ethic of our schools and culture until he picks up a gun and reminds us how much pain is right beneath the surface of Mr. Happy Face, go out and buy a hat, American culture. And I ask you to care enough about yourselves to read 3 hours a day, to read, to listen, to take space, to break the addiction of adrenaline, which is an addiction. You will go through hell avoiding sweets and TVs and this and that and the other, and be kind with yourself. Know that you're dealing with a shitload of pain. But the more people we have sharing it, and one of these, I'm making this video because I have never seen a video like this. I have never seen a video like this. Not from Norman Vincent Peale, not from Napoleon Hill, not from Rockefeller, not from Gates, not from Jobs, not from the Sony Corporation, not from Lazarus, not from this. I have not seen these videos. Whether you go to the New Age meccas or the business meccas or the nature meccas or the positive thinking meccas or the cancer mecca, whatever it is, I haven't seen this video. And this part, the part that is saying this, feels invisible and unwelcome in this cult. And I'm sad about that. Because I welcome him. Because he knows what's going on. And he cares enough to start a fucking nonprofit in the middle of all this. To start disseminating useful data. To be writing a book in the middle of all of this on 10xing our culture, 10xing our life, creating 10x countries. It's the one bright, the more pain I see, the more I have to balance that with some truly radical ideals, with some truly radical possibilities in the paradoxical balancing thing. I mean, the deeper the shame, the pain, the horror, the nightmare, the more beauty is required to stay sane, to stay alive. And so I'm doing both. But I made this video for two reasons. The man who asked for an apology, despite the tremendous exhaustion and outrage of having to ask for one, broke on that day. That persona turned into ice, and a new persona had to take its place. A new persona less loyal to the facilitator's reputation, less loyal to the little egos of this and that and the other who's going to be all upset because this doesn't sound right and make them look good, and I'm an American, how dare you talk about all this stuff, who's less loyal to that. Because I'm not giving up on the abused child within each one of us. It's time that our cult pivoted from asking the child to fit into more and more abusive protocols to asking the cult to understand the felt experience of abuse in this cult from the perspective of the child, and to take the weight of ungrieved ancestors, the weight of emotional illiteracy, the weight of adults who can never make a mistake so can never apologize, the weight of religious shame, the weight of lies, the weight of consumer addiction, the weight of gadget addiction off of children so that they have a chance to be born as they are and bring their gifts and innocence, which we must learn to receive by creating a container capable of reverberating that innocence on the threads, on the strings of the child's heart, which can heal us. Innocence is the only thing capable of healing this level of bitterness, exhaustion, and shame. And I feel very grateful to my sweetheart, who has an innocence like I have never known, who has an innocence like I have never known. And I trust her heart. When she becomes bitter, when she becomes frozen, I know that I've given her too much of my cult's toxicity that's still reverberating in my body. And it's my job to pull it back and give more of it to my abusers so that her innocence can flow again and heal my soul, heal my heart of the deep grief of watching the unconscious reenactment of one abuse after another, feeling it as deeply when I see it happening to someone else as I do inside. Thank you for being with me in this sorrow. Francis Weller, Robert Bly, a few others of the men's group are doing this grief work. I'm not sure if there are women counterparts about grief, because the chauvinism points to try to be strong, to not cry. There are so many unshed tears that are not ours, but have been given us by the emotional illiteracy and trauma of multiple generations. Slavery, racism, chauvinism, sexual abuse, addiction, civil war, murdering other peoples, the dark tapestries of our intelligence communities. There's a lot to grieve. And it's important to understand that we are consciousness that is in an environment that elicits enormous grief. And as overwhelming as it is, there's a very healthy point in grieving enough, in hating enough, in loving enough, in feeling enough to make the differential in identity that we are not the emotions. The emotions are what are played on the instrument of our heart. And we are both the musician at times. We are played through the mirror neurons and the empathy with others. And we are the witness. We are a consciousness. We are a presence that is hurt in this way, that is hurting someone in this way, that is betrayed in this way, that is alone in this way, but that is having those experiences. That is not who we are, but when it becomes so dense through lack of expression and coming to consciousness that 100,000 layers are right there, we start to confuse the witness with who we are. Who we are is luminous. And on one level has nothing to do with the video game being played, with the lifetime being experienced. Who we are beings learning to dance, learning to connect, learning to explore the reservoirs of truth and beauty and goodness. Even in the Platonic age, I think it was Plato that talked about our life here as a shadow, because the Eleusinian mysteries, the Kikion rituals of initiation, helped the Greeks discover through the transcendence of spiritual initiation, of psychedelic ritual. A 9-day ceremony, the Eleusinian mysteries, to understand that we are here visiting this terrain, which is like a shadow of another dimension that we will reawaken to, like a dreamer waking from a dream, like a video game player coming back to the present, like a VR participant coming out of the simulation and back into presence. And with ritual, with meditation, with the art of listening and differentiating ourselves from every one of the strings plucked on our heart, we can return here in our hatred, in our joy, in our love, in our beauty, in our sadness, in our deep grief, in our loneliness and terror, in our shame, and in our hope and desperation for something, a deep hunger for something more nourishing than the food that we eat in our daily lives.